Good morning, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Nice to be back on here live. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. Thank you for hanging out. Wednesday, June 11th, 8 a.m. on the dot. Wednesday, June 11th. Damn, we're already halfway through June. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Got a lot to get into today. Looking forward to having this conversation with everybody. We got a lot of good topics coming up here. So thank you for hanging out. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Got the rundown for everybody that I'm going to give here in just a second. Thank you again yesterday for those. I did mention that I was probably going to have a recorded show yesterday, so I ended up doing a recorded show. So I appreciate you guys getting a chance to watch that. Enjoyed my time with my guest, Claire, who covers the NBA for the Guardian. So if you didn't get a chance to go listen to that, it will be on the channel. All right, let me get kind of things started here for everybody. Real quick quote: there are two ways of spreading light: to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. Two ways of spreading light: to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. That one's kind of deep. Got deep on this Wednesday here. I see all the comments here. I'll take a look at the comments before we get the show started. Let me give everyone just a quick rundown here, and then we'll get things started. All right, NBA Finals Game 3 tonight. Not going to spend a lot of time on it, but there is an NBA Finals game tonight, so we'll talk a little bit about it, just some expectations. Hope the Pacers can kind of continue to make this thing interesting, so we'll get into that. Any shot at Walker Kessler? All of a sudden, Walker Kessler. Is Walker Kessler going to be the Miles Turner or the Buddy Hield, where there are guys that you feel like got traded to the Lakers 9 times and never played with the Los Angeles Lakers? We're kind of early on here on the Walker Kessler front. What would the cost? What would it be to get a guy like Walker Kessler? How much of an impact can a player like that have on this Lakers team? So we'll talk a little bit Walker Kessler. I saw some of that news come out. Jovan Buha, who actually had something on Walker Kessler. He's going to join the show in a little over 10 minutes or so. Jovan Buha going to be a part of the show. NBA rumors out there. Gosh, there's a lot of NBA rumors. Giannis, Knicks coaching, Tom Thibodeau, Jazz will listen to offers for Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen. There's a list of who are the favorites. I think Bovado put this out. Favorites to add Lauri Markkanen, and I think that what did that have on here? I think that had the Golden State Warriors as like the top team to get. You don't want him going to the Warriors. You definitely don't want him to go to the Warriors. So a lot of different NBA rumors that are out there. I saw some video. Did you guys see this video of DeMarcus Cousins with his game? I want to say, let me double check this just to make sure. In Puerto Rico. It got a little ugly. So I'll play that video a little bit later. I guess he's banned or suspended for the year or something along those lines, but he got into it with some fans. MLB baseball, I'm not going to spend, a crazy breakdown on it, but we'll talk a little bit about the NL West. Obviously, the Padres and the Dodgers are playing each other right now. They've played 2 games so far, kind of wild 2 games, to be honest with you. Both teams have taken a game. The Giants continue to win by 1 freaking run, and you got the NL West. You got 3 teams within a game of each other. A little bit of time on that. And then, of course, on Wednesdays, we always do Ask Slee. So if you guys got some Ask Slees a little bit later in the show, we'll throw those out there, and they could be about anything. So thank you for hanging out. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. A lot of comments here already. Do we look at some of the comments? No, let's just take our time here. Let's breathe a little bit. Cheers again to you. Hope you're enjoying your cup of coffee this morning. I'm definitely enjoying mine. Sometimes I do a glass of water. You're supposed to get some lemon water, get the engine going. Today, I just went coffee. I'm like, sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and have coffee. Putting diesel fuel in that tank. All right, let's see what we got here. Some people not that crazy about Walker Kessler. Okay, we'll talk about it. The past is in your head. The future is in your hands. Great. Phenomenal quote right there. Good morning, Slee. Good morning, Slee. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Let's Let's see. Santi Aldama could be the answer at the 5. I know he's more of a 4, but Memphis played him at the 5 quite a bit and even some 3. He would be a good fit, especially the way JJ wants to play. I saw something too. I forgot to actually put it in here, but a little bit part of my rundown. Robert Horry basically saying that Luka's got to learn how to play defense. Well, they also got to put together a team that, can hide him a little bit on the defensive side. I just want Giannis to stay out of the West unless he joined the Lakers. All right. Little Giannis chatter in there as we get ready to go. All right. First things first. Just real quick, let me hit on the NBA Finals. So we're finally going to get Game 3. There's a 3-day layoff in between games. And I think we're going to get a little bit more action as we go. Let me see one thing. I know they play Friday. They probably don't play again until Monday, if I'm just guessing here. That's how the NBA schedule is going to go. So we got they play tonight at 5:30, Friday again, and then Monday. So we're going to go the entire weekend without having a game, but we'll have a game on Monday night. Just my thoughts here real quick. It feels like there's been a lot of time off in between. I know it's not the biggest storylines out there around the NBA Finals. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't really care what teams are in it. I care more about, is it good basketball? And as somebody who just loves basketball, loves the NBA, I'm going to watch these games either way. Here's what I'm hoping for tonight in Game 3. I just want a game. What I don't want is a 15-point blowout by the Oklahoma City Thunder. And by the time you get into the fourth quarter, you're kind of like, all right, Indiana's starting, or Oklahoma's starting to take over the series. I thought it was interesting yesterday when I was talking with Claire. I thought she made a good point that one of basically two things it feels like is happening in this series. Either one, the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to blow out the Indiana Pacers, or two, the Indiana Pacers are barely going to squeak by. By the way, it doesn't really matter which one happens. If the Indiana Pacers just squeak by, well, then they're up 2-1. So it doesn't matter. You don't get style points. If you want to look at baseball, we'll look at yesterday, the Padres and the Dodgers. Padres won 11-1. You only get one victory for it. The night before, the Dodgers won by 1 run. Well, they still count. The Giants, if you go look at the San Francisco Giants, they're on a 6-game winning streak. 5 of those 6 games that they won are by 1 run. It doesn't matter how much you win by, you just get the W. If you're the Indiana Pacers, they don't care. They're not looking for style points. They're looking for, we need 4 of these to win an NBA championship. We already got 1. I do like that this is obviously now going to Indiana. I do think the place is going to be rocking. I think from that perspective, it will add some excitement to the series. I think anytime, you have such a heavy favorite like the Oklahoma City Thunder, how can we even things out a little bit? All right, one way of doing that is obviously to get your squad back at home. So to watch Indiana tonight, I think Tyrese Halliburton has been pretty so far in the NBA Finals. I think Siakam has been so far in the NBA Finals. They're going to need their stars to step up, have big nights. Role players typically play better at home. We'll see if that has an impact. And then, I think there's a little bit of the Oklahoma City Thunder have shown so far in the NBA Finals. They've shown throughout the NBA playoffs that every single round, it looks like they're just learning a little bit more. It looks like they're gaining that experience as they go, which is really, really uncommon. You don't see that often in the NBA. You don't see that often in sports, that teams that are young, usually what you say is they're just not ready to win. What you don't typically say is, hey, they're learning as they go, and they're becoming more and more dangerous as the playoffs go on. Obviously, their biggest challenge up to this point was Denver in 7 games, but they figured that out. They got it done. Here they are in the NBA Finals. Series is tied 1 apiece. Does OKC start taking a stranglehold on this series the further we go? Or does Indiana show that, hey, we got life and it's 2-2 through 4 games and we'll take our chances from there? So I think all these things make this series interesting. And I am also very understanding that, all right, it might not be the marquee names in the big-time matchups, but we're going to get Game 3 tonight, and I'm looking forward to watching it. So that's going to be at 5:30. Let me read a few of these comments here, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff as well. Let's see what we got here. OKC is vulnerable if they take time off in the middle of the game sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if if you just kind of I don't know, getting bored or something like that is the right way to put it. But they definitely had moments in game one towards the end of the game where, yes, they started missing some shots. Indiana started making a ton of shots, but you felt like maybe they took their foot off the gas. They did that against Denver in game one as well, and Denver snuck away with a win. But for me, there is a little bit of, I do think that they're kind of getting better as they go, and that just makes them a little bit more dangerous. Let's see what we got here. I just don't see the Lakers being able to really build a roster until LeBron is gone. Do I answer that right now? By the way, I get that. I understand that. You know, I continue to have the conversation. I'll probably have it with Jovan here when he comes on. It's really, really difficult to contend and build for the future at the same time. Those are two things that don't typically kind of fit together. Hey, I'm trying to compete for an NBA championship, and I'm also trying to build for the future around Luka. That's a very difficult task. Now, the good thing is Luka's not 22 years old. He's 26. He's been in the NBA Finals before. He's been to the Western Conference Finals before. I think what the Lakers have to do, and then they just got to, take their chances from there. Just put together a roster, put together a team that makes sense, put together the proper positions. Okay, hey, I know we got a legitimate center now. Okay, hey, I know we got a little bit more depth so JJ Redick doesn't go, 24 minutes without making a substitution in a playoff game. Guys that make a little bit more sense. Maybe you move Austin Reaves to the bench and bring him off the bench, still give him starter minutes, but you kind of separate him and Luka. Like, I think there are ways for them to still be very effective, but at the same time, that's not easy, and I understand where that comment's coming from. All right, let's see what we got here. Good point on first things first yesterday. SGA has been kept to around 15 points in the last two series, game threes. Yeah, they also had a point, which I think makes a lot of sense as well. Do you just decide, if you're the Indiana Pacers, we're going to put all our attention towards SGA and let anybody else beat us? I think that's probably the way they approach that in the NBA Finals. All right, anybody else beats us but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And if that means Alex Caruso and Lou Dort and Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren and everybody else goes off, you kind of take your chances with that, because the problem right now is SGA's – did you guys see his SGA stats so far in the finals? He's averaging, if I got this right, I think he got a 38 and a 34. He's averaging 36 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3.5 steals through the first two games. He's basically kind of doing whatever he wants, getting to the free throw line. He's doing his thing. And now the question just becomes, does he get a little bit of help? And there's enough talent there where I think, and they're a good enough defense where that kind of combination will probably take care of itself. Okay. Let me look at a couple more here. And then we'll talk a little bit about Walker Kessler. Let's do this. Let's kind of jump into it. There are a few different Laker topics that came up, and I'll probably save the Walker Kessler talk. Let me save that for Jovan. Him and I can do that together. But I mentioned this. There was a quote. Robert Horry was on the Dan Patrick Show, and he's talking a little bit about Luka. And I'm going to read part of what he said. It's a little bit long, but I'm going to read part of what he said. Some of it I agree with, some of it I disagree with. He said, it's so weird that people talk about his weight, but yet he's still giving people 30. I don't care about his weight. You need to get him in the gym and teach him how to play defense. Because you can give someone 40 points, but if you're giving up 35 on the other end, those 40 points don't mean anything. He never had to, because he's always had people behind him to erase his mistakes. There is no AD, there's no center. Nobody erased his mistakes in LA. He's getting blown by. They're getting layups. If you watch stretches of games where Luka just stayed in front because he's a big body, the offensive players are bouncing off of him. Just stay in front. I think that was the key. He goes on, says a few more things. First off, I mean, to kind of think about what Robert Horry is saying. He's saying that in the same sentence, he's saying that I don't think he thinks it's weird that people are saying that the guy needs to lose weight, but he also needs to be in the gym to teach him how to play defense. I think those two things go hand in hand together, personally. I think part of the reason why Luka's not a good defender is because I also think he's not in great shape. Also, as you get towards the end of the game, those extra LBs that Luka may be carrying, he's probably not going to be nearly as fresh as he was early in the game. How many games did we watch for the Lakers where he was unbelievable in the first half and then he kind of tapered off, or unbelievable in the first quarter, maybe a little bit less in the second quarter, maybe a little bit less in the third quarter, maybe a little bit less in the fourth quarter. It's almost like he went his trajectory as the game went on went down. Now, I'm not making any excuses for Luka, and I'm also not making any excuses for Rob Pelinka. They don't have a team. They didn't have a center. And when he was in Dallas, he did have the luxury of guys like P.J. Washington, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. He had big players, good defenders, guys that can help him out. At the end of the day, I think you could say all of this is right. I do think he needs to lose some LBs. I do think he needs to have better stamina as the game goes on. And I do think that there needs to be a roster and a team behind him that you could look at and say, oh, yeah, Luka got blown by, but he's got help. I mean, how many times did Anthony Davis might not be the best mistake or might not be the best example because he's one of the best defenders in the league where you had somebody get blown by, but you had Anthony Davis right behind you. You used to watch the Lakers back in the Shaq and Kobe days. How many times would somebody get blown by, but you still had Shaquille O'Neal sitting in the middle, and now you had to get a bucket over Shaq? So I think Robert Horry makes some good points in regards to Luka. I think the reason why J.J. Redick said we need to be in championship shape when he said that at the exit meeting, I think there's reasons for all that. But I'm not, I think those that try to justify where Luka was weight-wise, I have a difficult time trying to justify that. I think we could all just say, yeah, he could be in better shape. I mean, and just simplify it there. I don't think we really got to go any further than that. He can be in better shape. All right, I'll take a look at some of the comments here in just a second. I do want to welcome in our guest to the show, Jovan Buha. What's up, brother?
How's it going?
Good, man. Nice seeing you too. What's going on?
Just enjoying a quiet offseason so far.
Okay, quiet offseason. Now, are you how kind of entrenched are you in the NBA? Once Lakers were out, are you still kind of like all in watching all these games? Do you take a step back?
Yeah. As J.J. Redick said, I'm a basketball sicko, so I've been watching everything.
Okay, I was just hitting on I hit on a couple topics, and just because I was just hitting on the Luka stuff. Did you read that quote from Robert Horry? Robert Horry was on with Dan Patrick, and they were talking specifically about Luka. And basically what he was referencing was Luka's problem is not his weight. Luka's problem is he doesn't play good enough defense, or maybe just schematically isn't smart enough on the defensive end. Don't those two kind of go together? Don't you feel like there's a little bit of both that that can be tied to that? And I'm not obviously keeping it out of mind. The Lakers did not have a big, and there was certainly no help for Luka the way he had that help in Dallas.
Yeah, I would disagree with the part about his basketball IQ. I actually think that defensively, I think that that's arguably his strength on the defensive side of the floor. If you look at him as a help defender, and he's always been a guy that's like 1.5 plus steals or somewhere in that range, even in the playoffs. So I think he's a guy who can actually apply a lot of that basketball IQ offensively to the defensive side and be someone who is a disruptive help defender and is playing passing lanes and being disruptive. I think it's more on the ball where his defensive limitations are, where guys can target him and then blow by him. And there was that blow by percentage rate that was going around about just how much guys are beating him off the dribble. But I think shape has to do with that for sure. I made this point after the exit interview that I felt like that comment, of course, it applied to Luka and probably to a large degree, but I think it went beyond just Luka. I don't think everyone within the rotation played well in that series. I think most of the rotation did not play well. I think some of the guys were tired. They were, they played a certain style of defense that was very physically taxing for over 2 months. And I think they kind of ran out of gas in that first round. But I also think it goes beyond the physical state of, I think there's a mental component to championship shape. I think there's an emotional component to championship shape. And I think you could point to several Lakers in that first round who were not up to par or where they should have been in that first round. So I know people looked at Luka and the physical element of the championship shape statement, but I think it goes beyond that. I think there's an emotional component and a mental component, and I think several Lakers were not up to where they should have been.
It's interesting because I part of me, I instantly went to Luka. And I think that was kind of a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction. For those who don't know what we're talking about, during the exit interview, when JJ Redick said that he's hoping guys can get into championship shape, I think is the exact quote that he used. I thought of Luka, and then when I left, I'm like driving home, and I'm saying to myself, I'm like, all right, but how many teams are going that? They're playing such a limited amount of players. Even if you are in championship shape, I don't know if you can go 5 guys for 24 minutes in the second half. I don't know if, and even if I think there are times, I don't know if Jordan Goodwin's a good example, but there were some moments in the playoffs where I'm like, you know what? Use this guy for 3-4 minutes, pure energy, call it a day. He can come to the sidelines after, just give somebody that quick breather. I think there was, a combination of the two, right? Like we all know how imperfect the roster was. That's going to be the goals this offseason, to kind of go away from that. You're right that he probably met multiple people, but everybody just instantly thought Luka. But I also thought of JJ. I'm like, well, JJ, I don't know if you used some of the assets that you had the right way so that guys look like they were in better championship form with 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter.
And that's where I come back to the mental and emotional side of it. Of I think JJ and the way that he handled Game 4 and that substitution pattern could have been better. I look at a guy like Jackson Hayes who really struggled, and I think from both a mental and emotional standpoint could have been better. I think even Vando at times, I think was kind of teetering that line of being a little bit too chaotic and aggressive. I think Austin physically did not have, and we later found out he was dealing with that toe injury starting in Game 3, but this has been the second straight postseason where he has not shot the ball well, and it seems like his legs haven't quite been there. So I think there's several guys that you could point to and be like, they could have been better in various ways. And again, that's why I think it extends, in my opinion, at least my read was, this is a little bit deeper than, because he could have said physical shape, right? And I guess you could say championship shape is an analog for physical shape, but I took it to be beyond that, because this team, we saw the way that they collapsed in the fourth quarters of Games 3 and Game 4. Like they were not, they couldn't get to the finish line in that series. So I think, again, it went beyond. You could point to the lungs and be like, they were out of shape, and that was part of it for sure. But I think it's a little bit deeper in the playoffs than just the physical state. I think it's also mental and emotional.
Yeah, a lot of people out there thought I wasn't in good enough shape, as a podcaster. A lot of people thought, I got to work on my diet here. By the time I got to the end of a post-game show, Jovan, I wasn't the same person as I was towards the beginning of the post-game show.
I mean, we all got to be better next year.
Yeah. I mean, people saw it. They didn't see it with you. They saw it with me. They could see the all right, so many different things that we could hit on. I'll kind of just talk a little bit, obviously, now as we get closer to really hopefully some action coming soon. And it does sound like, I love it because I've referenced this a couple times. You had Rob Pelinka mentioning at the exit interview, thinks a lot of action, it's going to be good. You've heard Shams talk about it. You've heard Brian Windhorst talk about it. A lot of people just keep saying that there should be a lot of action, maybe even by the time you get to the NBA draft, and things could be happening. As you look at this Lakers team, how do you feel just about the position that they're in? getting ready for the offseason and knowing that there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be looking to make moves, the capital that they have to potentially make moves. Just how do you feel as we sit here on June 11th that by the time the dust settles, will the Lakers have addressed a lot of their needs, and just how much different of a roster can it look like by the time we get to next season?
I think so. I think it is going to be imperative that they are aggressive and assertive with trying to improve the roster because, for example, going back to last summer, there were, I think, a couple of opportunities that they didn't try to address quickly enough in terms of cleaning up the back end of the roster. And there was a couple teams early in the offseason that had some cap flexibility where you could have attached an asset to dump a Cam Reddish or a Christian Wood, two guys who clearly were not good enough to be part of the team, part of the roster, part of the rotation. And you eventually had to cut those guys in the season, but you could have done that, given up a small asset to get off their contracts and had some flexibility going into the beginning of the season. And around that time also, a guy like Gary Trent Jr. slips through the cracks and is a guy that a lot of people think is going to be a non-taxpayer MLE guy or maybe a taxpayer MLE guy. He doesn't get any offers. He's available for the minimum. And as I reported at the time for The Athletic, there was mutual interest there between the Lakers and Gary Trent Jr. And they end up not having a roster spot open, and he ends up signing with Milwaukee.
It was
and
great.
He's this bargain. He's one of their best players. He's closing games for them in the first round, and they end up losing in 5 in part because they face this juggernaut of an Indiana team, but also Dame goes down, and they have their own depth and roster issues in Milwaukee. But like the Lakers, you can't tell me you wouldn't rather have a Gary Trent Jr. than a Cam Reddish or a Christian Wood on that team. So I think like those things of just being opportunistic with how certain things play out. I think you got to be on top of that.
Can I ask you just stylist or strategy wise, why do you think Pelinka was kind of late to the game with some of that stuff? Because I think last year, you and I might have even had a conversation about this, that, we were surprised that really there was no action in the summer. What do you think kind of held him back? And is that something that you think he looks at this year and says, well, I can't make the same mistake I made a year ago?
I think he has been very strategic with trying to use certain assets, and the Lakers have been limited with their assets in his defense. So it's not like they don't have the OKC war chest of assets where you can attack. OKC can. They have been also a bit selective with how they approach things, but like OKC can just throw picks in left and right and overpay and get whatever they want. Like they've just wanted to build it organically. But I think with Rob going, really, I go back to starting in the summer of 2022, they've not made a big trade in any summer. If you go back to like starting, so 2021, they do the Westbrook trade. That's the reshuffling after the failed title defense. Then from the summer of 2022 on, they've only done like small signings in the offseason, and they've tended to make the bigger trades at the deadline. And I think part of that is the prices drop at the deadline. Their assets, you kind of have a better read on who you want to keep, what you want to use. But I think the downside to that approach, and this is something I started clamoring for last summer, was that if you're always rebuilding your team at the deadline, you lose out on continuity, and you're almost kicking the can down the road with that season. And how many times, like we heard it after 2023 when they traded Russ and then they got D'Lo and Vando and Rui, and it's like, well, this group only was together for 20-30 games, like let's see what they look like next season. Then last season, or 2 years ago, they had a bunch of injuries, and then it was kind of like, let's see what it looks like going into next year. And then they end up firing Darvin, hire JJ, and then they kind of run it back, and then eventually make some moves. And of course, like I think the DFS trade, the Luka trade were both home runs, so I'm not going to sit here and criticize that. But then again, at the exit interview in late April, it's, well, we had 20-30 games. So like I feel like they kind of keep doing this thing where it's like, let's wait till the deadline, try to find the best trade possible. And then if we lose, it's kind of like we have this built-in excuse of, well, we only had 20, 30 games. Like, we can't really judge this roster. So I think they need to do a better job of building the roster in the offseason, which I think is going to require a trade or two in the offseason, and then go into next year with the group you want. And if you need to make a deal, then you make it at the February trade deadline. You don't have the same assets, of course, but the difference is you have a larger sample with a team that you actually want to keep, rather than them constantly trying to shuffle it in season, which I think should be more of a last resort than like plan A. And it feels like it's been more of their plan A over the last few years.
What's your definition of, let's say we got to September 1st. What's your definition of, hey, that was a really, really good offseason for the Lakers? You know, you don't have to technically attach a name or anything like that, but just philosophically, by the time next training camp starts, how can you sit there and say, you know what, I feel really good about what they did in the offseason and what that will mean for the upcoming year?
So I look at the team and the team building resources that they have right now, and really it's the most likely, unless LeBron shocks us and opts out and takes a giant discount, which I don't anticipate happening, or he retires, which even then, I've talked about this before, but they'd only have like 15 to 20 million in cap space. They would not have some insane amount of cap space. And this is not the summer you want to have cap space. There's not a lot of good free agents. So if anything, it could lead to you potentially paying the wrong guy.
And it's not dollar for dollar. So it's not like, 52 is off the books. We got 52 to go spend. Right.
Yeah. So I would say that if you look at the primary ways the Lakers can improve the roster going into next season, it would be signing someone for that 5.7 taxpayer MLE and then making 1 to 2 small to medium sized trades. So I look at their trade assets in some order as that 2031 or 32 first round pick, upwards of 5 pick swaps, though technically it's 4 if you're trading one of the firsts, because you can't pick swap a pick that's going out. So really 4 pick swaps if you're putting the first on the table. Rui as an expiring, Gabe as an expiring, Maxi Kleba as an expiring, and Dalton Connect as a second-year player who showed some promise in his first year, still on a rookie deal. So you look at those assets, you could probably make 2 separate trades with some combination of those assets. So I think if you have me back on September 1st, put it on your calendar, and we're reviewing the Lakers offseason, they need to have made, I think, at least 1 trade with some combination of those assets and signed some type of bargain player, like some guy who's taken a discount for the 5.7 that makes sense. And if you tell me they make some trade with those assets for a starting level player, and they sign either a starting level or high level bench player with that 5.7, I think that's a good offseason. And maybe they make a couple trades. Again, I think they have 5 to 6 assets that you could split up or cobble together depending on how you want to approach it. But they make a trade and they sign someone smart for that 5.7. I think that's a good offseason.
Is there, just kind of looking at that 5.7, are there some players that you would associate that's saying that these kinds of players might be available at that price range?
I think the center market's going to be the one that's interesting, because you look at guys like a Brook Lopez, a Steven Adams, a Clint Capela. I don't anticipate Brook Lopez being available for that 5.7. I think he's going to get closer to the 14 full non-taxpayer. Steven Adams is a guy I think should be available, but there's been some buzz he might not be available. So he's a borderline one. And then Clint Capela is also a guy I don't think should be available, but I know Anthony Irwin just reported that he's heard he's someone that the Lakers think could be available for 5.7. So I would be open to a Clint Capela. Sure. I actually think he's arguably the best of those 3 in terms of what the Lakers need, because for as much as I would like to see Steven Adams setting some bone crushing screens and decking 4 guys to grab an offensive rebound, like he's not the lob threat or the finisher that you need with Luka. He's not really a pick and roll partner like that. And then defensively, he's relatively limited. He is a beast in the interior, but he doesn't have the foot speed to be a switching big, or even a big who's kind of out there blitzing guys and playing up to touch. So he's much more of a drop big, whereas Clint Capela, I think, can do some more of the things, though he's not this prime Houston, prime Atlanta Clint Capela. So I would say either the center spot Or maybe, similar to Gary Trent last year, does a guy like a Bruce Brown, does he slip through the cracks? And is he someone who has to take a pay cut and maybe he's available for that 5.7? He's a guy that the Lakers have had interest in dating back to the summer of 2023 when he signed with Indiana. The Lakers were confident that they were going to get him, and then Indiana came with the Godfather 2-year, $45 million offer that the Lakers couldn't match. So I was like, all right, he's going to Indiana, but they've had interest in him at the 2024 deadline, the 2025 deadline. So I think Bruce Brown would be someone they'd be interested in. And then I look at a sneaky one for me is I really like Gary Payton II, and he's not the sexiest name, but again, if you really go through this free agent class, it's not good. And it's a lot of like, you might have to overpay guys slightly depending on how you view them. But Gary Payton II from Golden State, I think is someone who's a multi-positional backcourt defender, plays with toughness, tenacity. He's got athleticism, is a really good rebounder and cutter. So I think if you're flipping Gabe maybe in a deal, who I think he's going to be one of the guys that's probably thrown into one of these, and you're replacing him with a Gary Payton II, you're not getting the offense or the shooting necessarily, but he can be that type of backcourt spark plug defender, and then you find the offense somewhere else.
What do you think is we're going to start hitting on names that we've associated with the Lakers, and I've said this before, joking around. I feel like Miles Turner has been a Laker for 3 years. Buddy Hield, I feel like, has had a long career with the Lakers. I think the new one now is Walker Kessler. Like, now we're walking into a name where it's like, well, if he doesn't become a Laker in the next 2 years and he's so young, are we just going to keep hearing Walker Kessler's name? Again, a chance to listen to your pod on Buha's block. How realistic? What would the price point be to go get a guy like Walker Kessler? Do the Lakers, you think, have the proper assets? Do the Jazz want to make a move with the Lakers? Just your thoughts when you hear the name Walker Kessler. Is that something that you think would be realistic?
I don't think so. So going back to last season, I'd heard the asking price was starting at 2 first-round picks for Walker Kessler, and they wanted even more than that, but that was like the minimum for them to entertain a conversation. I heard around the time of the Mark Williams trade that the Lakers had, remember, Luka had a list of multiple young bigs that he wanted to play with, and I heard that they floated that similar package to several teams, including Utah, for Kessler, and Utah said no. So I don't think Mark Williams was at the top of the Lakers list in terms of the young centers they inquired about. So I think if Utah is having a fire sale, you can't entirely rule it out. And sometimes players have some say, especially a young guy that maybe he wants to go to a certain place and they give him, grant him that wish. But I don't see the Lakers, like the most they could realistically offer is some combination of, because he's also on a rookie scale contract. So you can't, people want to throw in Gabe or Maxey, but then now all of a sudden you got to have matching salary with that. You can't just trade. They're not just going to take on like $8 extra million. Mm-hmm. It would have to be something like Dalton, the 2031 or 2032 first. Remember, they can only trade one. You could throw in a pick swap or two, but that pick swap's only so valuable because the Lakers are projected to be good with Luka. Utah is not projected to be good. So it's like pick swaps only have value if you think you're going to be better than the team you're trading with. Utah can't with confidence say they're going to be better than the Lakers anytime soon. So those pick swaps aren't really that valuable. And they have a second to throw in. And it's like, okay, is Dalton a first and a second good enough for Walker Kessler, who's one of the best rim protectors in the league, one of the best rebounders in the league, in his early 20s, still on a rookie deal, walking double-double. I've made the Zubac
sounds like a no.
It's a no. So yeah. I don't see, if the Lakers had a second first-round pick to trade, and there's ways they could go get one. If someone's really high on, I don't know, if someone's really high on Rui, you could maybe flip Rui for a first or something and then go get, but then now it's really Rui and Dalton and a first, and like now you start to add it up and you're giving up a lot. So I mean, there are ways they could be creative with it. I wouldn't say that's been their strong suit in terms of their roster building has been their creativity. Mm-hmm. And I don't see a way that Utah, that they have enough to meet what Utah wants.
Is as we kind of look at the rest of the roster, and obviously changes will happen, and hopefully Lakers are able to address it. Just kind of getting a chance to see Luka in those few months, getting a chance to see LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reaves together. Again, it's really, really tough to, I think, have too strong of an opinion when you had such an imperfect roster. But here's the reality. They ended up winning 50 games. I don't know how you felt going into the playoffs, but they had at least convinced us, like, hey, you know what? They got a chance to make some noise. They weren't able to do so. Everyone gets another year goes by. LeBron is a little bit older. I think you definitely see how Austin Reaves and Luka can get exposed on the defensive side if that's your backcourt. Kind of put all this into the mix together. If they're able to get the right big man, again, not this marquee name that's going to be an all-star, but just somebody that you feel like that's a good fit for the Lakers. If they could round up the rest of the roster with LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reaves, just how confident are you that they can make some real noise in the Western Conference? And also how much will you always kind of question, can you build off a 41 or 40 going to be 41, two players in the backcourt that not exactly are going to shut it down on the defensive side, just for what they already have? How much does that give you confidence? How much does that give you hesitation?
I think they could build around those three as a trio. I think we saw it over the last third, we'll say, of the regular season there, the final 25, 30 games. I do think there is little to no margin for error with the roster build. And that's where things get a little tricky in terms of, I think with Austin and Luka, I think it can work. And I might be in the minority with that. I know a lot of fans don't think it could work. I just look at 2022, he makes the conference finals with Jalen Brunson back there. And Jalen Brunson was not yet New York Jalen Brunson. He was actually coming off the bench a bit, for stretches there, but he really stepped up in the playoffs, and he was a playoff riser. And when Luka went down, he took over, and we saw what he was about to become when he went to New York. But he's also a 6-foot guard who is really limited defensively, despite being this fire hydrant and having a certain level of strength. Like, he's just a guy that people can pick on, I think, even to a larger extent than Austin. Then I look at 2024, and with Kyrie, they make the finals. And again, Kyrie, different class of player than Austin offensively. I'm not trying to compare those two, but defensively, I think it's fair game. Austin, I think, is a better defender than Kyrie and is also bigger than Kyrie by about 3 inches. So I look at that, and like Luka, and now part of that's also on Luka. I think he was better defensively in 2022 and better defensively in 2024. But this notion that like you have to protect Luka with 4 like all defense level defenders, and you can't have another liability or a guy that teams could target out there. I just call BS on that, because I look at 2022 and I look at 2024, and like he played with small guards. Now, granted, their offensive level was high, and Austin, I think, has to continue to grow and get better to be at a similar level. But those guys were not all defense guys defensively. If anything, there were relative liabilities and guys you could target. But now those teams had the front courts to protect them. And that's why I look at the Lakers and like, you got to go get that center. And I think you got to go get another big wing defender, be it more of like a 3-4 or more of a 2-3 type, but someone who can be that primary wing stopper. And I don't think they had that this past year. Dorian is much more of a big man defender at this point of his career. Rui was playing out of position. He's a 4, but sometimes they're putting him on like 2s or 3s, and it's just not his strong suit. So like, I think that they have 2 big holes, which is the starting center spot and a starting wing spot. And if you can go get those 2, I think that helps support Luka and Austin defensively. And I also think it takes a lot off LeBron's plate as a defender. So I think if they could get the proper guys with a certain level of athleticism, length, size, physicality, they plug those 2 starting holes. then all of a sudden, I think this is a group that makes a lot more sense. And to your initial question, I think they can make some noise. I think they can win 50 plus games again. I think they can be a top 4 seed, and I think they can win at least a round or two, which at that point, it comes down to health and luck and a lot of factors. So I think they could be right back where they should have been, this postseason.
Do you think Reaves is part of the long-term plan? Do you think right now, as that front office sits there today, eventually he's going to get paid and he deserves it, and he'll go back to market value, and they benefited off of his current contract and his production? But do you think, I know nobody's got a crystal ball on this, but do you think in a couple of years we're talking about how Austin Reaves is doing whatever he's doing, but continuing to do it with the Lakers?
I think it's part of the long-term plan, but I would say that, as we saw with AD, remember the Lakers were talking about AD is going to be the face, the next face of the franchise. LeBron's passing the baton to him. He's the next guy that they're going to be building around. It's about getting that second star with AD, and then they traded him. So I think that changed how I view the Lakers saying anyone's untouchable. Like I think Luka's at a different level where he's not even in his prime yet, and
sure.
I mean, just the way that trade was lauded, I don't see them trading or moving on from Luka anytime soon. But I think with Austin, he's not at that untouchable level, right? So I think we can agree there that for as good as he's been, as impressive as he was last season, I think he's gotten better every season. I think he's gotten better within the season every season, which is a hard thing to do. A lot of guys just you see the improvement early in the season, then they kind of stabilize. Austin's always like, you see the improvement and then it just keeps rising. Did have a rough playoffs, but I would say with Austin, I think he's in the short-term plan in terms of, I don't think they want to trade him this summer. I don't think they want to trade him next season. I think that the thing that could change that is, how does it look with Luka? Let's say they make the trade or two and they sign the guy for the 5.7. They add in 3-4 new pieces, reshuffle this rotation, this roster. How does it look next season? And is there still this ceiling there where maybe they go 52-30 and lose in the second round and Austin struggles again? Then all of a sudden, I think you have to put Austin on the table in a real way. And maybe at that point his trade value decreases a little bit, and that's something that you kind of missed out on. But I think they want to see it. And I think it was telling that Rob Pelinka said that Austin was one of the pillars along with Luka and LeBron. I don't think he says that lightly. So the fact that he put Austin in that conversation, again, doesn't mean he's not touchable, doesn't mean they can't move him, but it's definitely not plan A, B, or C for the Lakers to trade Austin Reaves. So I think the plan right now will be to offer him that extension. He's not going to sign it. It's below market value for him, but at least make the gesture, then go into next season, see how it looks. And at the earliest, you can look at the 2026 deadline and see where things are at. And maybe if it's not working, you can flip him, or you can re-sign him in 2026. And then you have to the 2027 deadline once he's trade eligible, because once you re-sign, you have that period there where you can't be traded. Then you look at 2027. And again, if things, you've rebuilt the roster, maybe you've added a new star, LeBron's retired, you see where things are at, and then maybe you could flip him then. But I do not anticipate them trying to flip him this summer. I've seen all the fake trades. Most of them, the Lakers would just not even consider. So I think they're going to try to keep him, make this work with Luka, and then figure it out either next season or the season after if they want to end up moving him.
By the way, I think that's so wildly fair for the front office to say, can we see what we got here first? Can you really, you just had a couple of months with them. Okay, what will it look like if they do put the proper pieces around them? I think that is very, very fair to look at the front office's perspective and say, can we see this thing marinate just a little bit? And I think that, and I'm with you. I think there are a lot of Laker fans out there, and I get it. I understand.
I get it.
There's a, hey, that's not going to be a championship backcourt. There's an overreaction. I understand where everybody's coming from that perspective, but I don't think you're asking too much to say, well, can we just see what this looks like going into a training camp, going in, trying to put together the proper roster, and then go from there. So I think that part's fair. Jovan, final one I got for you, brother, and I appreciate the time as always.
Of course.
Is there a team in the offseason that, or maybe a couple of teams that you would say, hey, watch out for these squads, and I'm probably leaning more towards the West, that you just think when the dust settles, they're going to be a problem, not just for next year, for years to come. Is there a team that you look at and think are going to be in the mix here for a few years, and not just OKC, because we know they're going to be in the mix?
Yeah. Breaking news. I think OKC is going to be pretty good.
I think they'll be pretty good.
We're just looking at their cap sheet, and they have, let's say their top 11 guys, only 2 of them are above 27. So,
oh my gosh,
I think they're going to be good for a little bit here. I look at Houston and San Antonio as the 2 teams that, depending on how aggressive they want to be this offseason, it could be going for the now it's starting to look like Giannis might not be available, but that also could just be some posturing. But let's say Giannis, KD, is Jaylen Brown available in Boston? Are they getting real aggressive with their tear down there and taking a gap year or 2 as Tatum recovers from the Achilles? So those teams could get in the mix for that caliber of player, but they could also get in the mix for a lesser caliber of player. And this is where I'll bring in a third team that I think is a team people have talked about a little bit, but not quite. Like, I think Houston and San Antonio are 2 popular ones that people are talking about a lot. But I look at New Orleans, and they are bringing in new management. They're now under Joe Dumars, and they're at an interesting crossroads where they have a roster that just doesn't make a lot of sense. They have a lot of players with similar skill sets or conflicting skill sets. So I look at New Orleans and what happens with Zion, but even what happens with a Herb Jones, a Trey Murphy, and some of Misi, the rookie from last year. Like what happens with, they just got a lot of young, interesting talent. And again, I just don't think that roster can stay healthy, but also it just doesn't really make sense together. So I think New Orleans could be an interesting way station for some of these teams where, okay, maybe Jaylen Brown, Boston wants to keep him. They want to keep the Brown Tatum thing together. Giannis isn't really available. And let's say KD goes to Houston. Then San Antonio, could you go pry a Trey Murphy or a Herb Jones from New Orleans? And like, it's not the sexiest move, but that's a starting level or like high level bench player who can be a part of your foundation moving forward around Wemby, or the inverse of maybe San Antonio gets KD and then Houston is the one who goes out and maybe consolidates some of their pieces for a better player. So I think those are the 2 teams with the most assets in between their young talent, also their picks that can make some noise. But then I also look at New Orleans as a team that could really shift the West depending on who they make available and how if they view themselves as like next year we could be a playoff team, then all of a sudden obviously that changes that. But I think it's hard to make that case. So I think New Orleans could be one team that is like a sneaky domino team, or if teams miss out on the top guys, maybe they go calling to New Orleans and are asking for some of these guys who I think because they play New Orleans maybe don't get as much love as they should.
All right, I lied to you. A prediction tonight?
I think OKC goes up 2-1.
Okay.
I think my series prediction was OKC in 6. I am sticking with that. I thought it'd be 2-2 after the first 4 games. Then they win the final 2. But I mean, they should have won game 1. They blew them out in game 2. I love the Indiana story. I think it would be awesome to see them win, but I think OKC is going to win.
All right, brother. That's by the way, I was OKC in 6 as well. So we're both on the same page.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. Something like that. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for doing this. I know we're going to get into a pretty fun couple of weeks here around the NBA. So we'll keep in touch, and thank you for the time.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother. All right, that is Jovan Buha right there. Jovan Buha. Okay, a couple things here. A couple things that I had in my mind here that I was like, all right, I'm going to hold on to this. One thing that he said that I will give he talked about Clint Capela. Ooh, if you got Clint Capela at that 5.6, that's a win. Guys, I'm telling you, that's a win. I don't know how realistic that is, but I would love to see Clint Capela on this team. And I'm not telling you Clint Capela is your answer to everything, but what I'm telling you, let me give you an example here. And again, this is just working with what you got. I'm not telling you it's a long-term plan or anything like that, but There was a report out there. I guess Jackson Hayes was responding to somebody on Twitter, I think on X, maybe on Instagram. I don't know what it was. And somebody had said, heard you don't want to be with the Lake Show anymore. He says, that's false, my G. I definitely didn't say that. Anyways, long story short, this is Jackson Hayes. You're going to need some combination of a couple of guys if you're not going to get the guy. And I think the chances of getting the guy, it's not going to be easy. I mean, let's just be realistic with each other. But if you were able to get Clint Capela and you got Jackson Hayes, now all of a sudden you got two actual bigs. One that's a veteran, has been in the league for a while and has played with teams and kind of understands how Luka plays, but you're also not expecting him to play 30 minutes a night. So I think there's, it's going to have to be a combination of things. I think his comp and his example of the Gary Trent Jr. from last year, great example. I think his discussion about how the Lakers haven't done enough in the summer, I listen, being a part of, obviously covering the team and everything else, there's been some head scratchers out there. Now, the year they got to the Western Conference Finals and you came back and you knew you weren't going to make that many moves because you wanted to kind of let things marinate a little bit, I didn't really have a problem with that. But I thought last summer it was like, yeah, you cannot come back with the same roster. They came back with the same roster. Now, they were patient, eventually traded for Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously then just changed everything and got Luka. But I think those elements are interesting. And I think Jovan's point about you don't have enough to get Walker Kessler, I think that's just be realistic with, what you have and what you think can actually happen. They do have assets, and the assets are expiring contracts, Dalton Connect, and that first rounder in 2031 or 2032, and then they can figure out what happens from there. What can you get with those players, those expiring contracts, and that draft capital, which isn't that much? They just have to be realistic with what they got. All right, let me look at a couple of the comments here, and we'll keep things going. Lakers are screwed regardless. There are no moves that can be made to become contenders. I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think the West is open enough. I don't know if the West will be open by the time by the time free agency is over, because hypothetically, if Durant ended up with a Houston or a San Antonio, two franchises that feel like they know what they're doing right now, OKC is only going to get better. What happens to the Warriors in the offseason? Does Denver get aggressive and make a move? Does, like he said, does Jaylen Brown become available and all of a sudden is on one of these teams? By the way, Boston, are you really thinking of trading Jaylen Brown? I mean, if I'm a team that's got the assets, I'm lining up for Jaylen Brown. So we'll see. You might be right. Data 3, you might be 100% right. Or there might be just a little bit out there where you can say, all right, well, if they put together the good team and a good roster, maybe they can contend, because we know that by the time they got to the playoffs last year, they certainly weren't in that position. Capela can guard without fouling. Jackson Hayes cannot stop it. Jackson Hayes is not better than Capela. Without fouling. Yeah, I didn't make the case. Maybe somebody else made the case here. No. I would actually, if you can get Clint Capela for that type of pricing, I'm a fan of Clint Capela. I think actually the Steven Adams thing that we talked about, Steven Adams 100% would be a backup center in the NBA. And so we're going to play 12 to 15 minutes a game. Guys, go look at how Houston used him. It's not like Houston's using this guy the way he was being used in OKC. That's just not the case. All right, let's see what else we got here. All Lakers need is a 3-and-D center, or a 3-and-D and a center. OKC, Spurs, Houston, Dallas, these young teams are going to get better. I'm not arguing that. I think they are going to get better. And then you also got to look out for some of these other squads that are out here that are in the mix as well. Again, what are the Warriors going to do? Let me give you guys a good example here. I got some NBA rumors, NBA news. I'm looking at this yesterday. Bovada. The Warriors are the favorites to land Lauri Markkanen in a potential trade. It's the Warriors, the Heat, the Magic, the Spurs, or the Mavericks, and then the San Antonio Spurs. Okay? This is my point of what I'm referring to. The Golden State Warriors are a good franchise. They run very, very well, and they have been run well for a while. Lauri Markkanen on the Golden State Warriors, that's that changes everything. That changes my perspective on the Golden State Warriors and how they're able to do it. I don't know. We'll see. But that's just an example there. There's certain franchises out there that are also not just going to sit around. Warriors are one of those teams. You know, how aggressive will the Clippers be? Can the Clippers put together a deal? Can Denver figure out a way to get a little bit more depth? There's other teams out there as well that you could say are on par with where the Lakers are, but what their offseason looks like and the assets they have to go for, depending on who they go after, can obviously be a major impact in the Western Conference. So I saw that one. A couple other rumors that I saw out there as well. Windhorse said that action is coming, and it's probably coming around the NBA draft. So that's what he said. I'm going to read a quote here. He said, the NBA offseason is going to happen faster than normal. Shams has cleared his calendar, and he's prepared to work his hardest around the draft. You're going to get your action very soon. I mean, that's just another person. Now it's not even, is there going to be action? I don't even think that's the question. Now the conversation has more to do with how soon the action is going to come. What's the NBA draft date? Let me just make sure here. It's obviously coming in the next 2 weeks. Actually, I think it's 2 weeks from today. So the NBA draft's on June 25th. The NBA finals will be done by then. I think we're looking at, a 2 weeks coming up here, which by the way, it's probably one of my favorite times of the year. I think for the NBA, it's just phenomenal how an off season is this exciting. But the next 2 weeks, you're going to have so many rumors, so many things that are out there, some that are stick, some won't stick, some that are just GMs and agents, everybody just positioning. And then you're going to actually have action. But if everybody's saying, hey, this is coming around draft night's 2 weeks from today. So that was something that I saw from Brian Windhorse yesterday that I wanted to read here real quick. Let me get another one here. That two more things that are NBA rumors that I want to get into real quick. The Dallas Mavericks have become the latest to rebuff the New York Knicks in their search for a new head coach. The Mavs firmly rejected the Knicks' request to speak with Jason Kidd. Kidd joins the Rockets coach, Ime Udoka, and Minnesota Timberwolves coach Chris Finch as those whose teams have denied permission to interview with New York, sources confirmed. It's funny. I'll just say this about the Knicks. And I guess for me, the Tom Thibodeau firing, I get it. Somebody wants to make an argument. What the hell are you doing? Don't fire a coach that got you this far. It's the furthest you've gotten 25 years. Completely understand that. But if the Knicks have a plan and they feel like they have another coach that they can get that's a championship quality coach, and they felt like they hit a ceiling with the New York Knicks, or that Thibodeau hit a ceiling with the New York Knicks, and there was chatter within some of the players that they weren't crazy about Thibodeau, and some people didn't like that Jalen Brunson's dad is the lead assistant to the New York Knicks, then I freaking get it. I understand it. Go make a change. Here's the only problem with the Knicks. If you thought you were going to grab a really good coach from another team, you're 0 for 3. I mean, if you told me that the Knicks got Ime Udoka, I'd be like, badass. That's a great move. If you told me they got Chris Finch, I'd be like, man, Chris Finch is a really good coach in the league. If you told me they got Jason Kidd, it's like, well, okay, hey, makes sense. Well, if you went 0 for 3 on all three of them, and none of these teams are giving you basically these other coaches are using the Knicks as leverage to probably get a new deal with the team that they're at, or whatever the case is. Well, now the pressure is going to be on. You better get yourself a good coach, because a lot of people are going to look at the Knicks and say, well, you fired him, but did you really have a plan afterwards? And we'll see what happens. The last thing I want to just quickly mention here from an NBA front. I don't know if you guys are seeing this, and you heard Jovan mention it for a quick second. It doesn't sound like, again, this could be posturing. This could easily be something that not a lot of people are going to pay attention to, or it could be real. There is real conversation and real chatter that Giannis Antetokounmpo may very well not be available. An NBA executive on Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis isn't going anywhere this summer. Of course, this is an executive that will not reveal. Nobody will reveal. The Bucks feel they can still win with him. So now all of a sudden you're hearing, and I saw Windhorse say yesterday, there's no market for Giannis because he hasn't officially requested a trade or anything along those lines. So as we all sit here today, And if the domino of the entire offseason is predicated on Giannis Antetokounmpo, I have no idea if people are sitting back and this is complete posturing, or there actually is not a, obviously a move to be made or whatever the case is in regards to Giannis. So we'll see what happens there. Okay. One video I do want to share. It's kind of a wild video here. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see this. So I've told you guys before, I go a lot on Hoops Hype, and I'm on that website a lot. I get a lot of my content from there. It does a great job of taking, whatever things from everywhere. And I'm looking, and DeMarcus Cousins is everywhere. I'm like, why is DeMarcus Cousins being talked about? Like what's going on with DeMarcus? Let me show you guys this video. The hell happened with DeMarcus Cousins in Puerto Rico? By the way, I'm going to get, I'll take a look at some of your comments here. Let me just kind of get through all my NBA stuff here real quick, and then we'll go through it from here. So from what I understand, I guess DeMarcus Cousins is, I was reading this here, altercation courtside. This is in Puerto Rico. Videos posted on social media. I guess a lot of people were heckling him, whatever the case is. Look at that. Watch this.
Los fanáticos tranquilos, muchachos, tranquilos. Ya.
That's a wild video. By the way, my bad there. The volume there, way too loud here. Way too loud, right as that went. Did that not make you think immediately of Indiana and in Detroit? Just I think it's more because of the popcorn being thrown, the drinks being, thrown out there, all that other stuff. Didn't it make you think exactly of that? That's where I went to immediately. But DeMarcus Cousins, I think out for he's ejected for the year or something like that, or suspended for the year, something like that. I don't know. I just saw that video. I'm like, all right, well, I'll play it for everybody and everybody can look at it. Okay. Let me take a look at some of the comments, and then we'll get into my last couple of things that we're going to jump into here for real quick. Let's see what we got here. Slee, would love to talk Lakers with you this summer. We're talking. We're doing it right now. All right, let's get another one in here. KD will get traded. Giannis will stay. Yeah, I think there's nobody out there that thinks that, including the Phoenix Suns and including Kevin Durant, that doesn't think he's not going to get traded. So he's definitely going to get traded. The Giannis thing, maybe the Giannis thing is more up in the air. I don't know. And if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm sure you don't want to show any desperation or anything like that. I think the good thing with Giannis for the Bucks is he hasn't demanded to be traded. Giannis hasn't come out and said, hey, I want to be a New York Knick and that's it. I want to be a Los Angeles Laker and that's it. I want to go to the San Antonio Spurs and nowhere else. You haven't seen any of that stuff. So I think some of that stuff is obviously a good thing if you're the Milwaukee Bucks. So we'll see what ends up happening. The Knicks are just embarrassing themselves left, right, and center. I saw somebody else say here that the Pacers were just a better team. I don't disagree with you there, but what I will tell you, if you're the Knicks and you were built to beat the Boston Celtics and you beat the Boston Celtics, you can't lose to the Pacers. And I'm not telling you that the Pacers aren't a better team, but game one, you're up 14 with 2 minutes and 41 seconds left to go, and you blow that game, and then that kind of changes the entire outcome of the series. All right, let's see a couple more here. Let's see what we got here. There has never been a bigger clown fan base than LeBron fans. You're lame enough to blame the third option for averaging 16 points when you've got two stars averaging 30 and 25 apiece. I'm going to take it you're not the biggest LeBron fan. I don't know if you can isolate one person for the Lakers run, because even if LeBron is putting up absurd numbers at 40, which he did most of his 22nd season in the NBA, I don't think it mattered. Even if Luka's putting up absurd numbers, I don't think it matters. I think that if Austin Reaves had a better postseason, I still don't think there's a crazy run that the Lakers are going to make. They were incomplete, period. And I'm going to go back to I'm going to go back to an interview that I had with Amin Al Hassan when it was very unpopular to say that I don't think the Lakers are going to get very far in the playoffs because they don't have size and they don't have an experienced head coach. He said that at a very, very, very inconvenient time. And you know what happened? The Lakers didn't have enough size and they had a very inexperienced head coach. Was that going to change the further the Lakers went? I don't think that was ever going to change. So this is the summer to try to fix it. Okay. One quick thing here on baseball, on just really on the NL West here real quick. And then we'll do a little Ask Lee. So if you're here hanging out, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. We're already $1:10 into the show. Wednesdays, we do Ask Lee. Lob in some Ask Lees for me. Ask some questions that have nothing to do with sports. I'm okay with that. Some random questions, whatever it is that you want to talk about, throw them in. Kind of, this is more of a funner segment or whatever the case is, but we do it on Wednesdays. Any Ask Lees that you have, throw them in, and I'll hit on a couple of them. Real quick on baseball. Have you guys looked at the NL West standings? By the way, yesterday might be something I've never seen before in my history of watching baseball. You have basically the Dodgers decided we're not going to use any more arms. That happens sometimes. And you use a position player in the 9th inning. They brought in Kike in the 7th. I'd never heard of that before in my life. That's wild. And I get it. Dave Roberts had a bullpen game, and I think he's thinking in his head, and Dodgers and the Padres got one more game against each other. It's a 1-1-10, whatever, first pitches later today, so in a few hours. I get it. He's like, hey, the game's over. I mean, I don't want to use any more of my arms. But a position player in the 7th, I've never seen that. Okay, real quick. I'm going to go back to the standings here real quick. Here are the standings right now in the NL West. The Dodgers are 40-28. The Giants are 39-28. And the Padres are 38-28. 3 teams separated by 1 game. I mean, however you want to look at the Dodgers, honestly, they have so many injuries and are depleted from a pitching perspective because of the injuries. But they have so much talent that I'm not surprised that they're still in first. I think the biggest surprise in the division is the Giants. The Giants have won 6 in a row. Literally, if you go look at the San Francisco Giants, every freaking win they have is by a run. And then the Padres, a lot of times they're not playing good baseball and they find a way to win, or they just find dumb ways to lose. Like they're a little bit all over the place, but they're also 10 games over 500. I didn't think they'd be 10 games over 500 at this stage. The NL West has seemed pretty fascinating. Will there come a time where the Dodgers just run away with the division? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of it might just have to do with the health of some of their pitchers and everything else. But so far in this series between the Dodgers and the Padres, Dodgers took the first game, obviously in 10 innings, really kind of an ugly game. I thought the Padres were awful defensively. I don't know. It looked like a video game for those first few innings. And then yesterday, the Dodgers almost conceded the game once they went down 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. They're like, all right, screw this game. And then a lot of the runs that the Padres got after that, it didn't really matter. So they'll have one more game to kind of finish up here. But that NL West is pretty wild to see where the NL West is. All right, let's take a look at here at a couple of these comments. And we got some Ask Lees here, so we'll get into that as well. First off, let me do this one. Slee, Lakers had to lose. If not, who would trade with them if they made a deep run? I don't think they were trying to lose. I think they just didn't have the proper assets and the players to make it happen. Slee, what's a good movie to watch? Darren Coolidge. Very, very broad question there. But let me see if I could throw. You know what I started watching yesterday? Let me see what this thing is called. I want to see this, and this isn't going to be a movie, but I'm going to throw something out. Have you guys started watching this? I think it's called Power Moves with Shaquille O'Neal. And it's basically Shaq is now president of Reebok. Allen Iverson is the VP, something along those lines. And both of those guys are kind of heading Reebok now. Specifically Shaq. Shaq is very, very heavily involved. And they're trying to bring Reebok back. They're trying to negotiate with different players. There was a lot of chatter. They were going to try to go get SGA. SGA ends up re-signing with Converse. And now they're going after basically G League players or Ignite players. You guys know that league that's owned by the NBA. They're going after WNBA players. I think Angel Reese is one of the players that Reebok got. That's kind of an interesting show. Shaq is Shaq. He's such a great personality. But I thought it was a really smart thing for Reebok to do to have that show going. So I think it's actually a pretty good show so far. I've said this, as far as some of these other Netflix series and everything else. I don't really watch Netflix a ton, but this one I thought is a good series. So maybe there's one recommendation there for you in regards to Netflix and something that I'm watching right now. All right, let's see what we got here. Let's see what we got. Not in the seventh. That's too early. I mean, a blowout loss, yes, I know you're going to bring in a position play, but the seventh, that's the earliest I've ever seen somebody come out. By the way, he was decent. I think he only gave up one run. Ashley, we're heading down to San Diego for Father's Day weekend. Favorite beach for families and a couple of must-eats. Thank you. Appreciate you, Slee. Kate, thank you for asking. I'll tell you, I actually, right near my office, Solana Beach, Fletcher Cove. That's a great place to go for families. And I think Solana Beach, of all the beaches out there, easily accessible. I think a little bit more chill than some of the other beaches. I would say Solana Beach, Fletcher Cove is a good place to go. You want some food around there? If you're going to be with family, there's a good cafe there called Claire's, and it's going to be busy because it's Father's Day weekend, but phenomenal menu, big menu. It's got a lot of different types of foods. I would try that out. I would try Claire's. All right, hopefully that helps you there. Let's see what we got here. Favorite vacation spot. Okay, this is, I'm going to tell you one of my favorite vacations. I don't think it's a vacation spot that you're going to every year. I thought Japan might be the most amazing country I've ever been to. Japan is just phenomenal. The food is great. It's wildly clean and safe. The people are so nice. It's beautiful. You can be in a big city like Tokyo, or you can take off and take their train system, and their transit system is unbelievable. You can end up in areas that have wildly different than what Tokyo looks like. Kyoto is a phenomenal place. That's their original capital. What's another place? Osaka is another great. I thought Japan's amazing. So I will throw that out there as one of the best places to go to. Let's see. Slee, LaFraud, and Rich Paul must be paying your ass a lot of money. So much money. I'm getting paid so much under the table. So much under the table. I mean, I can't even tell you how much money I'm making. Every week, Rich Paul has a suitcase. We see each other in an alley in an undisclosed location, and he just comes with a suitcase. And I say, Rich, where's my money? Have you been listening to the pod? And just money everywhere. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I can't believe you're on to me. Let's see. Let's see here. I don't understand any of this, but I'm going to go with low-hanging Fruit Loops. Low-hanging Fruit Loops. So much money I'm getting from Rich Paul. It's crazy. Let's see what else we have here. Let's see what we got here. Okay, I think we're good. I think that should do it. We got $120 on the show today. I haven't gone actually this long in a while. I think we're good. I think we got everything that we got here. Did the Padres win yesterday? They did. They're a very, if you're a Padre fan, it's a very stressful watching that team. Let's put it that way. All right, my people. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Shout out to Jovan Buha for being a part of the show. Another phenomenal show with him. Thank you to everybody being a part of the show. Of course, our sponsor. Thank you to Brad Wallace and the Wallace Firm. Excited next week to welcome in Lexus Santa Monica into the mix. They'll be part of the show as well, so I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I think we're going to have some stuff start going down here pretty quick. And I think it's only going to make, obviously, for a fun reaction to these games. I will be doing, somebody's asking here, I am going to go on after Game 3 tonight. So once Game 3 is over, I'll hop on and we'll talk maybe about maybe a half hour or so about the NBA Finals, however long it goes. Hopefully the game's interesting, so it gives us something good to talk about. So thank you for being a part of the show. I appreciate it. And thank you to Rich Paul. Just suitcases of money. Suitcases of money. All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.